110th Contact, Sunday, July 9, 1978, 2:40 p.m. Semjase says unfortunately, there are, once again, very unpleasant reasons that led us to call you here. Another time, we have to intervene by way of reprimand and clarify a few things. Billy says I can vividly imagine what it concerns, because for quite some time, I've been annoyed by this halfway into the grave. Semjase says sure, you speak of Jacobus, whose behavior and attitude has become so dangerous for our whole mission that it is already at the point of the unbearable. It is more than unfortunate that such things happen again and again with the members of the group, who are, nevertheless, precisely those human beings who are very well oriented in many respects and who must be aware of what is dependent on their own actions and thoughts for themselves as well as for the mission and the group and for the whole of earthly humanity. Despite this orientation, however, many do not submit themselves to orders and commandments and repeatedly endanger the existence of the group and the fulfillment of our common and overall mission. For several months now, a destructive attitude in Jacobus has been hardening more and more, and his reflections and aspirations for and toward what is right have shamefully given way. Thus, he only needs for himself a period of less than 12 months, before he collapses in himself and allows his unjustified and senseless outbursts of anger to cascade without end, which he isn't able to restrain anymore, which will mean the final collapse for him. He also provokes such a collapse by his senseless behavior with several other members of the group because his behavior spreads to them like a malignant disease. This is an evil in him, over which he must become master within a few days, otherwise it will be the factor of the final destruction of your group and, with this, our overall mission. We have become tired of constantly having to deal with these kinds of unfruitful and destructive matters, especially because of the fact that you apparently do not strive for everything in the manner in which you should. It is given to you to make sure that all rules of order, etc., are observed and followed. Unfortunately, there are no successes to be noted but, as a rule, only new setbacks and the like. Your efforts seem to be not too great in regards to resolving these very deplorable conditions and this constant unreasonableness. Unfortunately, it isn't possible for us to concern ourselves with your interests every day but only from time to time, which is also why we have only now become attentive again to this vicious and destructive condition. But it shouldn't be the case that we encounter such unpleasant things in almost all of our inspections, for if you would truly strive for everything in the best way, as you've agreed to do by a promise, then everything would have already been taking a turn for the better for a long time. But somehow, you seem to have become disgruntled and a stranger to your task, which is why you no longer strive for everything in the old and accustomed manner. If you now also start to act in this way, then you will also become the destroyer. It is no. Billy says you saying things that. Semjase says please don't interrupt me. It is now the case that I have received the order to inform you of the following. Another time period of 3 months is to be set for Jacobus, as of today, in order for him to make a final change in himself. If this hasn't happened by this point in time, then the whole group must make sure that he is removed from it and that he no longer receives a possibility for a return. But from now on, you yourself should strive for everything again in the old manner. Should you not do this, however, then you would make it clear by this that your interest in our overall mission has expired, even though that would be incomprehensible to us. If this should be so, however, then this would mean the complete destruction of all tasks, which would have as a consequence for you that all of that knowledge in you, which you've received through us, would be completely eliminated. This would be somewhat less than 40%, and what that would mean for you, you know that very well. Quetzal says nothing is to be changed in our decision, and you should strive for everything in truth again, in the old form. It is simply incomprehensible to us that even you suddenly fall into the same unpleasant forms like various group members. Least of all, we understand this, that we stand in very close, direct contact with you and presumed to know you a lot better. Your current actions are completely illogical and, thus, also incomprehensible to us. Billy says, may I now say something, too? Semjase says, sure. Billy says, nice, that I may also do this. Now listen carefully. First of all, you are seriously on the wrong track, for in no way have I made another type of change in myself. I've only tried not to shout anymore, as this was necessary for certain things in the beginning. On the other hand, I have simply had enough of this shouting, and my nerves also don't bear it anymore. I would finally like to be myself again, namely in such a way as I really am. The shouting isn't appropriate for me, and it also isn't my style, which you know exactly. That's the second thing, if you can understand that. I have nothing more to say to that. Quetzal says, but why, then, do such things happen again and again, like with Jacobus? And why, then, are all ordinal rules constantly neglected and trampled on by various group members? If you would explain to them, however, that they must voluntarily adapt themselves into this, if everything should continue and bring about success, then they would change their unstable and still in many ways doubtful senses and accordingly strive for a change to the better. Billy says, you accept that, but I know otherwise. Look, I'm just not with all this anymore. I'm sick of constantly being pounded by you all, just because you don't want to understand that it isn't because of me. If the others don't want it, then it isn't because of me. In the beginning, you thought that the Earth human beings could be treated as your equals and that one could simply give them advice in the form of guidance and could expect a success. But that hasn't worked out, as you know very well. For this reason, you have now come and have recently declared that you have seen that it doesn't function in this way, when each group member has to recognize for himself his own duty and fulfillment of duty and the responsibility for it and, therefore, has to know it and then also act accordingly. But that was and is demanding simply too much from the Earth human beings, which you have, indeed, realized. But you haven't realized that it can't simply work out in the other way, that is, if you come and say that regulations now have to be issued, thus, that it must be specified as to what has to happen. And you will still be astonished at how the Earth human beings, even though they are used to very different things, will interpret such regulations as regulations that are just to be received and not to be followed accordingly. Indeed, what you have given recently, those were only regulations. I see that absolutely clearly, and I can see with the best intentions also nothing else behind it than just regulations. But some of our group will see no regulations behind it but something completely different, commands, plain and simple commands. And those who see such commands behind it, for any illogical reason and out of non-understanding and still for any other indefinable reason, etc., they will already exclaim very soon that these regulations are nothing other than dictatorial measures. You'll see that this will be so, you can count on it. Semjase says that cannot be so, for our regulations are in no way given in a dictatorial form, and they also don't hold in ambush such a desire. Quetzal says I can only confirm that. Billy says you will still be astonished at what the Earth human being is capable of, when he presumes himself in the right even if he is thereby in the wrong. With the assertion that a dictatorship is present, the exclamation of slavery then comes at once. You will truly be astonished yet. Semjase says you are exaggerating. Quetzal says that is also my view. A group member would have to think very unreasonably if he would maintain such. Are you still speaking of the group members? You cannot be serious about this. Billy says just live on in your delusional belief. In any case, and I'm telling all of you this once and for all, I will go on strike, as soon as a given arrangement, regulation, or rule becomes violated even once. Quetzal says what's going on in your mind? What do you want to say with that? Billy says quite simply this, that I will give up the leadership of the group if a given arrangement, regulation, or rule, etc. is deliberately violated even once. At that moment, the group could find someone else who is to be responsible for the leadership of the whole thing. I, in any case, would not then do it anymore. And if no one would want to take over this task, then I would leave the center. I would then seek a job for myself and leave everything to so-called fate, as it is said with us. Then, I would finally have my rest and my peace again, and then I could finally be myself again and wouldn't need to accumulate any more anger in me and ruin my nerves. I just can't do it anymore, which you can truly understand, however, if you use your brains a little. Quetzal says if you would leave the center and, thus, would not fulfill your task anymore, then the period already mentioned of 3 months would be set for you, after which all that knowledge in you, which you've received through us, would have to be completely eliminated. Billy says that really doesn't matter to me, and what I know is still too much. I would love to know absolutely nothing of it all. Semjase says you are very embittered, which indicates that your words must be of correctness and that we have probably been wrong about you in essential points. Hence, I will strive with Quetzal to get to the bottom of things. Consider, though, that in your group, probably no one can be found, who could presently take over the leadership in all matters, for these are too manifold. But moreover, this leadership also stipulates an extraordinary and unusual knowledge and ability in manual regard, which is owned by no one in the group. Also outside, hardly any individual can be found, who could have this knowledge and ability in all interests. Billy says that's all the same to me. In any case, I would do nothing more in this respect, and that is my last word. If a grossly negligent or quite deliberate violation comes again, then I am throwing down the pickaxe. Quetzal says there is no sense in us further talking about these things today. I will consult with Semjase and Patai and the others and will try to find a solution. But how this will look, that is presently still a mystery to me. Nevertheless, it stands firm that you cause all of us a lot of worries and problems and that you've mixed up and even partially destroyed all our plans. A proposal was already made recently by various ones of us that we should only limit our mission to our own interests and leave your humanity entirely to its fate. This is also understandable because since that time, when we let 2 of our conversations degenerate into loud tones, still nothing in your group has substantially altered or changed with regard to the observances of rules and regulations, at least not for the better. Changes did, indeed, appear, but these only concerned the forms of the manner of actions in the sense that irrational actions and thought forms changed into other irrational forms. Billy says that may very well be. Quetzal says till we meet again. I will let you hear from me soon. Billy says okay, bye together. Semjase says till we meet. The end.